Welcome, everyone. I'm Clyde, your Dharma leader for tonight at the Inside Meditation Community of Charlotte. If you want to take a moment to show your video and see who all's here, we'll do that before we start our talk. Okay, great to see everyone here tonight. The title of my talk tonight is Gratification, Danger, and Escape. It could also be called My Fire and Brimstone Sermon, and you'll see later why I could call it that. This concept, this framework of gratification, danger, and escape, it came out of Bhikkhu Bodhi's book, In the Buddha's Word, an anthology of discourses from the Pali Canon. And it's a kind of a framework or a concept that I haven't really studied or it hadn't dawned on me, but because I've read the book probably 2 or 3 times. And this last time I read it, it kind of resonated with me. And something we haven't really studied here, we haven't really talked about here. So that's what we'll be looking at tonight. When the Buddha started teaching, one of the things the Buddha was good at was that he could teach, he could tell where people were in their progress, and so he could tailor everything to what the person needed. Some people had been meditating for a long time, and he could talk with them, or people that were newcomers. But typically the teachings were what they call a graduated discourse on the Dharma. So these dharmas, like Thea talked about last week on the teachings. So these is a graduated discourse on the Dharma. The Buddha realized that the Dharma was subtle, deep, and difficult to see. So he usually did it in 3 ways. He said for newcomers, he would first start talking about giving, generosity, this moral discipline that we talk about in here, harmlessness, honesty, self-restraint. These are the sila factors that we talk about in here, the ethical factors, sila. So these were for newcomers, people that was coming in. Then he talked about the dangers of sensual pleasures and the blessings of renunciations. And that's where we're going to spend some time tonight, on these dangers of sensual pleasures. And then he goes, after he did that, he went on and he talked about his teachings about the 4 Noble Truths. This is the suffering, the cause of suffering is attachment, the end of suffering is letting go of attachment, and then the way out of suffering is the Eightfold Path. So, but the Buddha knew, so if we go back to this dangers of sensual pleasures, the Buddha knew that his teachings were kind of counterintuitive or didn't go away the way people thought nowadays, were thinking then, that they were looking for happiness in these sensual pleasures. So we just gave in to the longings of the heart. We were looking for happiness here. And he knew that was going to be different for him, for his teachings. Bhikkhu Bodhi says, as long as we are infatuated with the seductive lures of sensual enjoyment, as long as we take delight in being this or becoming that, we will regard the sublime Dharma as a mystery and a puzzle. So when he talked about sila and everything, people kind of bought into that. But one of Buddha's first challenges was to break this grip that sensual pleasures and worldly attachment have upon the world. He knew that we kind of look at things through a filter, a subjective bias. And this subjective bias was based on this clinging and attachment. And as long as we had the clinging and attachment, we would continue to reinforce this subjective bias and we would continue to suffer. So we wanted to offer us a different perspective. And that's the idea in this book. It's called offering a deeper, deepening one's perspective on the world. And this was important. He also said that as part of his enlightenment process, he realized there was gratification, danger, and escape. And until he realized this, he was still an unenlightened bodhisattva. So this different perspective is what we're going to talk about tonight. And it's really these three steps, this framework, these three steps in the unfolding process of insight. And, we kind of tend to skip over this. We come in, we talk about Sila, and then we start talking about the Four Noble Truths. And so he spent a lot of time on this. So what is gratification? Gratification is simply saying that these sense objects, these forms and feelings, offer a form of gratification. We get satisfaction from this. We get gratification from it. We continue to fulfill our desires. We're looking for happiness, so we fulfill our desires. And he talked about the 5 chords of the senses, the 5 chords of these senses. And he actually described it, it's taste and sight and sound, but he would use terms like flavors, aromas, sights, sounds, touch. Those have more of that allure to them, that enticement to them. But we tend to follow those. We follow our desires. That's what we're following, these sense desires. We follow those. That's this gratification that's present in this world. He says, then if you go on, you begin to see the danger. And the danger is what we come across with the danger is that we're trying to hold on to these sense desires. And what do we know about them? They're impermanent. They're based on impermanence. So what we have is this thing, we have some suffering, we have some discontent. There's change. There's no lasting happiness here. And that's the danger. There's no lasting happiness. So we become disenchanted with the world. Then so we began to look for escape. And Bhikkhu Bodhi talks about escape. He says it's the most judicious course of action we can take when we recognize danger. So we've recognized this danger, so we start looking and seeking and searching for a way out of this. What's the best way out of this? What's the most judicious way out of this? So this is a different perspective on this. So how did he drive this home is what I'm trying to get to here tonight. How did he talk about this danger that's in here? He talks about these major objects of attachment. And these objects of attachment have to do with essential pleasures, bodily form, feelings, and views. And I'm going to go over a couple of these tonight because they really do. This is some of the most graphic language that you're going to hear in the suttas. And this is from the sutta. And this first one it has to do with the fever of sensual pleasures. This is from the Majjhima Nikaya. And suppose, Magadhenya, there was a leper with sores and blisters on his limbs, being devoured by worms, scratching the scabs off the openings of his wounds with his nails, cauterizing his body over a burning charcoal pit. The more he scratches the scabs and cauterizes his body, the fouler, more evil smelling, and more affected the openings of his wounds would become. Yet he would find a certain measure of satisfaction and enjoyment in scratching the openings of his wounds. So too, Magadhya, people who are not free from lust for sensual pleasures, who are devoured by craving for sensual pleasures, who burn with the fever of sensual pleasures, still indulge in sensual pleasures. The more they indulge in sensual pleasures, the more their craving for sensual pleasures increases, and the more they are burned by the fever of sensual pleasures. Yet they find a certain measure of satisfaction and enjoyment and dependence on the 5 chords of sensual pleasures. Now, this is the last of like 5 or 6 descriptions using this leper. So there's pretty powerful visuals here about how dangerous the sensual pleasures could be. Then he goes back to another one, which I think is even better. It's not better, it's just different. And this talks about this idea of sensual pleasures. And he talks about, he takes it from the family and into the world. And again, with sensual pleasures as the cause, kings quarrel with kings, Brahmas with Brahmas, householders with householders. Mother quarrels with son, son with mother, father with son, son with father, brother quarrels with brother, brother with sister, sister with brother, friend with friend. And here in their quarrels, brawls, and disputes, they attack each other with fists, clods, sticks, or knives, whereby they incur death or deadly suffering. Now, this too is a danger in the case of sensual pleasures. As a mass of suffering visible in this present life, having sensual pleasures as its cause, source, and basis, the cause being simply sensual pleasures. Now, this is bringing into the household, family disputes. Then he goes on, and he says, again, with sensual pleasures as a cause, men take swords and shields and buckle on bows and quivers, and they charge into battle, massed in double array, with arrows and spears flying and swords flashing. And there they are wounded by arrows and spears, and their heads are cut off by swords, whereby they incur death or deadly suffering. And they said this too is based on sensual pleasures. So it takes it from the household all the way up to wars and people fighting in wars and killing each other, all because of sensual pleasures. This is the danger in these sensual pleasures. And he's trying to point out here how important it is that we see this. He goes on to talk about in form, he says the danger of form. And you could use a male or female. In this particular case, he uses a female, a young female that's 17 or 18. He's asking the monks what they think of this form, this beauty, this beautiful form. And then he describes this same person on their deathbed, sick, dying, and then in eternal grounds, and how the form changes. He talks about feelings. He talks about meditative states that monks get into and how they attach to these things, because he's talking about attachment to all this. And then he talks about attachment to view. And the classic here, these descriptions, is the one about the blind men and the elephants. The king got he got all the blind men together, showed them they had to touch the elephant in different places, and then the king came and said, okay, describe for me an elephant. And someone said, he's a water jar, he's a plowshare, he's a storeroom. And each of the others likewise described the elephant in terms of the part they had been shown. Then saying, an elephant is like this, an elephant is not like that, an elephant is not like this, an elephant is like that. They fought each other with their fist, and the king was delighted. So part of this is not only just the interesting about this one, it's not that we're holding on to these views, is that we're blind. We can't see. We're not seeing the whole picture. If we don't see the whole picture, we're only going to say this is a part of it. We have this view, but it creates suffering. It's danger in the world. So we look at, we think about lepers and swords and elephants and things. And I was thinking about this and I thought, well, what about present day? And then I thought, well, every morning I look at the headline news. I just look at the headlines. And what do I see? I see shooting. I see killings. I see oppression. I see people going to war. I see people incurring violence going on. And this is present day. So this attachment to these sensual pleasures is still playing out in the world today. This attachment is the attachment to the sensual pleasures is dangerous, and we see it in the world today. This is what's happening. So it's not just in the past. And I think the Buddha was trying to point out, this is something, like I said, now this is the fire and brimstone section of the talk that I just gave. This is where, if you've ever been to church and you've heard one of these, you know what I'm talking about. That he's trying, I don't think he's not as scaring so much, but he's saying, this is the way it is. This is the way it is. This is the way life is. And if we see this, then we want to find an escape. We want to find a way out of this. What's the best way out of this suffering? That's when the Buddha, once he got people to this point, he said, okay, here are the teachings. Here's the Four Noble Truths. There's suffering. And even the Pali commentators equate gratification to the second noble truth, which is clinging and attachment. They equate the danger to the first noble truth, which is suffering. And then they equate escape to the third and fourth. There's a way out of suffering, and it's the Noble Eightfold Path. Because the Buddha didn't start out teaching not self and dependent origination. He had to start back here and get people through sila and then the danger of the way the world is now, so that people would be receptive to his teachings. And this is our practice. What is our escape around this? Our escape is our meditation and our mindfulness practice, our study of the Dharma. We want to see things as they are. We want to see this condition, the rising, passing away. We want to see this impermanence. And the Buddha used this same structure. He's used this structure, and he used it to describe the six sense bases. He used it with the five aggregates of clinging, and he also used it in the four elements. He used this thing of there's gratification here, there's danger here, and there is an escape here. So what do we do with this? We kind of want to be able to bring, it's nice to have this structure, this framework, if we're caught up in suffering. What am I caught up in here? What's the danger here? If I'm suffering, there's a danger here. And how do I get out of it? What's my escape from this? Well, we go to our practice. It helps to motivate us. We see what the way the world is, and we have the teachings, we have our practice to help us escape out of here. So I'm going to close with what the Buddha said. So the Buddha, he wasn't saying that the gratification, danger, and escape was a bad thing. He was just saying that's the way it is. He said, if monks, there were no gratification in the world, beings would not become enamored with the world. But because there is gratification in the world, beings become enamored with it. If there were no danger in the world, beings would not become disenchanted with the world. But because there is danger in the world, beings become disenchanted with it. If there were no escape from the world, beings could not escape from it. But as there is an escape from the world, beings can escape from it. Thank you for your attention tonight. Now, if anybody has any questions or comments, they can chat them in, or they can, if you raise your hand, I can unmute you. So your challenge this week is to see if this framework, if you see this framework in your own life, if you see it, if you see this, is that the way it is? I'll go ahead and do the announcements then, in case anybody has any questions. Our website is www.imccharlotte.org for any details about this. The book discussion group is going to start on May the 6th. I think it's once a month, May, June, and July. It's Mindfully Facing Disease and Death, and it's going to be hosted by Joy and Larry. There's an event, a community service event, Clean Up Charlotte event at Freedom Park, May the 8th from 9 to 12. David Chernikoff will be our guest leader on May the 19th. On May the 22nd, he will be doing a day-long retreat that Saturday. The registration is open for the day-long, that you can see on the website. Mary Aubrey, our guest leader, will be here on June the 16th. Registration will be open on May the 1st for the IMCC Summer Retreat, which will be August the 19th to the 22nd. That will be an in-person retreat at St. Francis Springs, and we're working toward having distancing and having being able to meet in person there. Next Wednesday is the first Wednesday of the month. We have our practice discussion group for people that have an advanced experience practice. That's at 6:45 next week. And so we want to thank everybody that helps put this on. And we also, Donna, thank you for your generosity for the Sangha to keep us going, keep us up and running. We appreciate that. Let's see if there's any. I believe the Tuesday sits began on May the 4th. That will be via Zoom. We used to meet at the chapel on 12 on Tuesdays. That will begin on next Tuesday, May the 4th. I believe the link will be on the website for that, for that connection. And Denise has put the other announcements up there. I don't see any questions. Another thing too, I know it does sound like that, but we don't use this a lot now, but thinking about, we don't think about lepers and things like that, but they help us the visuals help us to remind us to be mindful, to be present. I know back then they didn't have that. About beings. Beings, it's beings, B-E-I-N-G-S. Okay. Well, if that's that, we will end with our meta meditation. That's right. Angela, I'm not even going to attempt to say your last name because I know if my accent, it's going to come out wrong. So let's take a moment to get relaxed for our exactly, Elaine. They're always present. They're still here. They haven't gone away in 2,600 years. So kind of settle in, do our meta meditation. Take a couple breaths. And kind of come into your heart center for a moment. Get out of your head. And just feel your heart around there. Some people like to put their hand over their heart when they do metta. And we start with ourselves. And I'll say some phrases and you can repeat those silently to yourself or you can use your own phrases. May I be safe and protected. May I be healthy and strong. May I live with joy and ease. May my happiness increase. Now think of someone that you would like to send loving kindness to. You may bring an image of them into your mind and then kind of let that slowly um, drop down into your heart, this image of this person. May you be safe and protected. May you be healthy and strong. May you live with joy and ease. May your happiness increase. Now extend our loving kindness to all beings in the world. May all beings be safe and protected. May all beings be healthy and strong. May all beings live with joy and ease. And may the happiness of all beings increase. And may any benefit that we receive from the night's practice be for the liberation of all beings everywhere. May all beings be free. Have a great evening.